What is up, everybody? Today is going to be a pretty chill video. I'm just going to be showing you the best way that I know how to set up the Quest 3 for iRacing. Right out of the gate, I'm not some kind of tech whiz or anything like that. I'm not super experienced with computers. So I'm just going to be showing you some of the stuff that I've learned that makes a really big difference in iRacing, because there are a few settings that are kind of hidden that are really, really good to know about. I'm going to be showing you how to set this up with a link cable specifically. You can do this wireless with a nice router, a 5G router or a 6G router. It does work very well if you're in the same room with the router. However, I find that the visual fidelity that you get wired is significantly better. The wireless is still very smooth, so if you just don't want to screw with the wires, that's totally fine. I just wouldn't really recommend it specifically for sim racing stuff. Okay guys, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is go and search up Oculus app or MetaQuest headset app. Click on it, come down here, should be right here on the front page. Download MetaQuest link app. Okay guys, so once you get the app downloaded, it's going to pull up. And it's probably going to ask you to set up your device, which I already have set up. The first thing that's probably going to have you do is test out your USB-C cable. You're going to need USB 3, so make sure you get a USB 3 cable. I have the official link cable from Oculus. It's very expensive and probably not necessary. I've heard from many people there's absolutely no reason to buy the official cable for the money. That being said, some people say they get faulty cables from Amazon. You might have to go through a couple of them to check, but if you're really conscientious about saving some money, just getting a standard regular USB 3 cable with good reviews from Amazon should work perfectly fine. Okay, so the next and most important thing right here is to come over here, click on your headset, and scroll down to graphic preferences here. This is going to give you your refresh rate options and your resolution options, okay? To me, in VR, I have absolutely no ability to tell the difference between 90 and 72 hertz. Some people, on the other hand, absolutely swear that 90 is the only way to play. Some people say they get sick if they play below 90. Some people say it's not smooth enough, but for whatever reason in VR, I just can hardly tell. The thing about running at 72 hertz that I like so much is it clears up so much performance headroom. You can run much better settings, much higher resolution. There's one caveat to this though with iRacing. It actually seems like the CPU runs better at 90 hertz than it does at 72 hertz for me. I run into stuttering when I'm using OBS at the same time that I'm running iRacing. So if you're having like minor, like micro stuttering issues, you might want to actually try bumping it up to 80 or 90 and seeing if that smooths it out. Because for me, that did. When I'm not running OBS and recording though, I can run at 72 hertz with no stutters or anything like that. And I would much prefer to do that so I can crank my graphic settings up. Okay guys, your render resolution down here, there's going to be a little bar that tells you what your recommended spec should be. I would not listen to this. I would definitely crank it up. Everybody has different preferences for what they prefer VR to look like to them. I prefer sharpness above almost everything. I'm somebody who would tenfold prefer to have not great graphics and have my resolution cranked up to where I can actually see what I'm looking at. Some people don't feel that way and they'd rather have better graphics, so you can move this down if you'd prefer to crank your graphics up. But I would recommend cranking this as high as you can get it and working from there. If your PC is very weak, you might want to do this a little bit at a time until you can get a stable frame rate and then work from there. And then if there's certain graphic settings that you like, you can run it back if you need to. I have a powerful PC, so I have it all the way to the right. I recommend you give it a try. It's another reason I like 72 hertz because it clears up a lot of headroom so you can move this over. Okay guys, so this is a very important step. Do not skip this. This is going to be a huge benefit. What you're going to want to do is come to Program Files, come down to Oculus, go to Support, and then find Oculus Diagnostics. Okay, you're going to have some options in here. What you're going to want to find is the Oculus Debug tool, okay? I like to pin this to my taskbar down here. That way it's always accessible for me. Or you can put it in a shortcut, put it on your desktop here. So basically, once you find that, you're gonna open it up. First things first is find PC asynchronous space warp. All right, this setting is basically going to cut your frames in half and put in fake frames. The thing is, in VR, it looks absolutely atrocious. I absolutely hate this. I would disable this at all costs. Next thing that you're gonna want to get in here, very, very important. Okay. Encode bitrate right here, all right? You're going to want to take this as high as it can go. You can bump this up all the way to 940 from my understanding. Some people say 960. I've played around with that, haven't had issues, but for now I'm just going to leave it at 940. This is basically going to get rid of a massive amount of your compression. The visual quality is just massively degraded if you can't bump the bitrate up. It does have a caution for high values causing certain instability, so if you're having problems, you might want to bump this down. Originally, they would not let you put anything higher than 500. It's letting me now for some reason, so it looks like they probably changed that. Yeah, it's letting me do it, but if you have problems with it, just open your notepad, enter 940, copy paste it into here, and it should let you do that. That's how we used to have to do it. That's going to make a massive, massive difference in your visual quality. Next up, just make sure link sharpening is turned to quality. Makes a big difference to the overall image quality. So highly recommend that. It has almost no performance hit as far as I can tell. All right, last thing really quick is visible HUD down here. If you guys want a performance graph, drop out this drop out menu, hit performance, open it up. It's going to open up a graph here. It's going to look like it's frozen. And it'll stay frozen until you get into a game. If you have an issue with it though, toggle it off, turn it back on. Up here in the top right of your screen, you're gonna see a little dropout menu with what looks like a headset. If you're using an Oculus headset, make absolutely certain you set this to Oculus. Every time you then go to launch, it's gonna pull this up and you can select, do you want it on your monitor, OpenVR, or XR. Make sure you select Oculus if you're running Oculus. If you do not select Oculus, it is going to cause major performance issues. Just a little tip for VR users in general though, if you download a game off of Steam that has VR support, make absolutely certain when you launch it, you're using the Oculus launcher as well. There should be an option for it in the Steam settings when you go to launch the game. If you use Steam VR, it will basically cut your frames in half. It will not run well at all. It's basically impossible because it will run the Oculus software at the same time it's running Steam VR, which basically just is doubling the load of your PC. If there is not an Oculus option to run, what you're going to want to do is use virtual desktop with a wireless router. That will allow you to run Steam VR only and completely bypass the Oculus software. So keep that in mind, but let's go ahead and get into here. Okay guys, first things first, everything that you see before you get into the actual car is not reflective of the graphics you are going to see when you get in the car. When you go into options and you go to replay, this is where those graphics are going to be, okay? So everything out here is completely separate from what you see when you hit race. So if you're having issues with your frame rate dropping significantly while you're trying to watch back a replay in VR, you can lower the graphics to get that to a smooth place. Okay, now we're going to go into the graphics settings. First things first, UI zoom here, okay? This is how big this display is going to be. I do believe this also affects the in-car graphs like your relative board and whatever else you might have open there. So I'm just going to open that up. I'm going to make it really big. That way you guys can see it easily. To start off, I believe everything in this top left section is all CPU based from what I have read online. So if you're struggling with CPU, you might want to go more heavily and lower some of these settings. Everything over here is going to be GPU based. Really quick, guys, shader quality down here, if you have this too low, it is going to gray out some options for you. You're going to have to turn it on to at least high if you want to unlock all of the options. So keep that in mind. One thing really quickly before I get into the main of this, cockpit mirrors is something that a lot of people might have the urge to turn on. This will absolutely destroy your system. I'll play you some footage of it on and off in a little bit, but just right out of the gate, turning this off is going to save you a ton of headroom. The first thing that I would do right out of the gate is turn on sharpening. That is the very first thing I would do. I don't know if this is going to come up on the screen well at all, but when I turn sharpening off, everything is a little hazy and a little blurred, like you can see here on the dashboard. If I look at the grandstands back here, just slightly blurry. It's not bad at all, but turning on sharpening takes that to a whole other level. Boom. So much sharper. So much sharper. It's like a completely different looking game now. I feel like I'm looking through a window instead of looking at like a hazy screen, if that makes sense. Absolutely the first thing that I would turn on. Next thing up is going to be very similar, but it's going to be about your MSAA samples, okay? I've always run ×4. Running ×8 is absolutely a joke. Absolutely no reason to do it. Do not turn on ×8. It makes almost no difference and your performance will absolutely get destroyed by doing so, okay? If you're struggling, you can turn this down to ×2. However, I think ×4 looks much, much better. So whatever I have to sacrifice on this entire screen to get to ×4 is what I'm going to do. They also have this new little box over here that drops out what kind of filter you're going to get. I much prefer sharp. I think it looks really, really good. If you do something like neutral, it looks so much worse. Like immediately, I'm left with that same like hazy look. So if you can run sharp in 4 times there, you're already off to a good start. Even if everything else is on low, I think that is a great place to start. All right, now we're gonna go over this side over here that is supposedly very CPU dependent. Okay, so first things first over here, grandstands can cause pretty serious issues with performance depending on your PC. If you're getting really bad stuttering, I would try turning grandstands off. It can be a pretty big issue, so keep that in mind. With all this stuff over here, I would recommend turning it all off or as low as it can go and then slowly building it up and seeing kind of where your performance is at. I can barely notice a difference between almost any of this, save for objects and maybe particles, okay? I like to leave everything on low. Sky on low, I just don't see much of a difference. I do believe this can be a pretty big performance hit, so I just like to have this on low. I legit just don't ever notice if it's on high. I'm not ever really looking at the sky. If you have some extra room, maybe turn it up, but I like to leave it on low, even though I've got a 49. Cars, I like to have on high just because that is always what you are looking at, so it is very important to me to have that turned up. However, I have kind of tested this at medium and low, and I really can't tell much of a difference. I just like to have it on just because I have the room to do it, so I have it turned on. I'll go into pit objects and event in a second because we're also going to be tying that into objects. Okay, guys, so we're going to go into grandstands and objects now. This is something that is very important to me. I really like the atmosphere of having the grandstands. When you turn off grandstands, it's not very exciting to have grandstands off. So if I can swing it, I will sacrifice almost everything that I need to get grandstands on, okay? That being said, the difference between low and high grandstands, it is noticeable. I don't know, maybe it's not that noticeable. It's just, in my head, it looks better when I have it on, though I'm just not sure that it does. I personally run it on low. I just don't see any reason to turn it on to high. I just like having the atmosphere of it there. I feel the exact same way about crowds. Almost no reason to have these on high, in my opinion. I like having the fans there, again, for kind of an atmospheric kind of thing, but I see no reason to have them looking good. I don't think they look good on high anyways, so might as well just have them look bad and take up less system resource. Objects, though, is where things get very, very important to me, and this is a perfect track to showcase why this is. If I turn this off, I'm going to drive around the track, and you're going to see what I'm talking about here. All right, we got our grandstands, but everything else is completely barren. We have nothing on the track whatsoever. We have a few trees, but other than that, it is just completely empty. Looks very dead, and it does not feel realistic to me. If I turn objects on to low, that's the first thing that I would do. We're gonna automatically see a big difference. Okay, there we go. Now we got like the lap board up. We got some signs. We got some pit objects back. Like all this stuff over here. This is kind of why I say that pit objects doesn't make that much sense to me, because you can see all this stuff here, right? If I turn that back off and get back in the car, look, it's all gone. That's why I say pit objects don't make any sense. We don't have like a pit box or anything, and now it's just like an empty, you know, kind of set of stuff here. So let me turn it back on light here, or on low. You can see it definitely made a difference, okay? We got a little building here. We got some houses. You know, the middle is still not amazing. Everything over here is kind of empty. Let me show you what happens if we turn this on to high, though. This looks good, okay? This is what makes me feel like I'm playing a high-quality game here. I feel like I'm actually at the track. It's adding so much atmosphere, okay? We got all these lights set up now. Look at that. We got a freaking Ferris wheel over there. And one of those swing sets. Like, now I feel like I'm at an actual racetrack, and it just feels so much more alive. Pit objects in event kind of confuse me a little bit, and I'm going to show you why here in a second. If I turn pit objects on to high, in event also on high, okay, I'm going to hop into the race here. I'm gonna turn around in the pit here, and we're going to take a look at it, okay? So just take a look at the pit here, okay? Like, I'm looking around, and I just don't... so you guys can just kind of see what this looks like, right? Just kind of noticing everything in here, like the cones, everything kind of around the pit, right? I'm gonna come back into graphics, all right? I'm gonna turn event off, pit off, both of those off, all right? Now I'm gonna hop back into the car. Okay, now we're looking at everything in the pit here again. Very not large difference at all, as far as I can tell. Like, I don't actually see, maybe if we had a full grid, like some of the things would look better or whatever. I just like to have it on low. It's so unnoticeable to me that I just don't see much point in doing anything with it higher than that. Okay, so the next thing we have here is particles. I'm assuming this has to do with dirt being kicked up and sparks and like debris and stuff like that. I haven't really tested it. It's kind of a hard thing to test. I love that kind of stuff, like the dirt effects, so I like to have that on high. So in order, sharpening goes on for me, MSAA comes on. I would even turn car detail down to get objects and grandstands on. If your CPU is struggling, I recommend trying to turn all this off and seeing if that fixes your issues with performance. Real quick, I'm not going to act like I understand a lot of this stuff down here. Before we get into shadows, I'm going to come down here to HDR. I really like having HDR on. It makes everything a lot brighter and more vibrant. It is a pretty decent performance impact. So if you're having issues, I would play around with it. I do think it makes daylight racing look so much better. In the rain, though, I like to turn this off. I think HDR looks really not great in the rain. I think it looks way more atmospheric with HDR off. That being said, some people like to race with it on in the rain because they say it improves visibility. Okay, so now we're going to go up into shadows. With shadows off, we're going to drive around the track really quick and we're going to take a peek. So you can see we have no shadows anywhere on the ground. We're not getting shadows from the light poles, the wall. We can also see my performance is around 50-ish%. Okay, you're gonna come over here to shadow maps, turn that on. Okay, it's gonna open up some new options for you as well. We'll deal with those in a second. You can see we have shadows coming off of the light poles and off of the wall of the track. This makes a huge difference in how good the game looks. It feels so much more alive now and way less sterile. It can be a big performance impact, however. Actually, right now, it doesn't look to be eating up my GPU too badly. This is something I definitely recommend having on if you have the headroom to do so. Just keep in mind, it might be a bit of an impact. Now we're going to hop into an AI race. Just so I can show you guys what the other settings do. What I want you guys to focus on here is the shadows that the cars cast, or don't cast, I should say. So you can see you have a little bit of shadow underneath the car, like flat, but what you'll see is when we drive, they don't really cast shadows in a realistic way whatsoever. The wings aren't really casting shadows on the body panels. The cars aren't really casting shadows off to the side. All right, so now you know what that looks like, guys. Let's go and take a look at the other settings. Now, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Object cell shadowing right here, I really can't find much of a difference with having this on or off. I just leave it off because it makes very little difference to me. Doesn't really seem to affect performance all that much either, so maybe it's fine to leave on. I just don't see a difference, so I see no reason to have it on. Dynamic objects, though, or what I assume means dynamic objects. This makes a very big difference. Huge difference, okay? I don't enable this in mirrors because it's probably just going to be more taxing. It's going to cast realistic shadows off of the cars, basically. This is going to be a very large performance hit, though. This is definitely a beastly setting to turn on. So you guys can already see, we have a shadow being cast off of that wing in front of us, okay? Do you see that on the Porsche up there? Okay, now take a good look at the shadows being cast. Look, it's shadowing the back ends of their cars off the wings. It's shadowing on the ground off to the sides. It makes them look like they are planted on the actual ground instead of just kind of floating. Okay, now you guys can really get a good look at kind of how the shadows look. You see how it's running down onto the track here? It makes the cars look so much better. It is a big performance hit, but if you can swing it, I would absolutely recommend turning it on. Now we're going to go into something that is not worth swinging for. Now, there's another setting that has to do with shadows, and it's this screen space ambient occlusion, okay? This will absolutely destroy your PC. Turning this on, I would have to restart the race to get this on, which I'm not going to do, because it would just destroy my frame rate. There's no possible way to run this in 90 FPS. It does make a noticeable difference, I think. I'm not 100% sure I can see the difference, but I do think it looks better by a decent amount, you know, 10%, 15%. However, it's not going to be worth it for almost anybody. I'm running a 4090, and I cannot run with this on and have other things on. It's just absolutely not worth it, so I wouldn't even screw with that. Here's where things get interesting, though. Cockpit mirrors will absolutely destroy your system. I also hate the mirrors in this game. They are wonky as frick. Not to mention, I want you guys to watch what happens when I turn these on. Look at my my headroom here. We've absolutely destroyed my headroom here. We are struggling right now just from turning these mirrors on. I would just not run with these on. I like the virtual mirror better anyways. You guys might disagree, but turning that off is going to gain you so much performance. I mean, look how much better off. We're talking like 20, 25%. Maybe even more than that. I mean, it's just too taxing, guys. If you have to have it on, at least lower the mirrors to like 2. I bet that'll help a little bit. Not really. Having even 2 on is pretty brutal. I'm not 100% sure what distortion does. Heat haze, though, is something I actually really like. I will turn this on sometimes. When I'm recording, though, I like to have it off just so it's a little bit more clear. But basically, like the heat from like the engines, like when your car's really hot, you're going to see like some of that heat haze pop up. This option here, 2048 by 2048 car textures. If you have a little bit of extra VRAM, you can turn this on It basically gives you better textures for paint jobs on the cars. If you're struggling with VRAM, on the other hand, you can turn on this video memory swap high-res cars. It is only going to render the higher quality textures with the closest 3 cars to you. So if you're struggling with that, you might want to turn this on. I like to at least have 2 pass trees on, just so they're not literally the most disgusting things you've ever looked at in your life. High quality trees, if I have extra headroom, I will turn on. If you guys get sick in VR, come over to options here into driver's view. You're going to see something called roll chassis and pitch chassis. If you guys set this to 0, this is going to lock your head in place. So when you go over a bump, your head is going to stay still. Or when you take a corner that is kind of got some camber to it, it's going to keep your head upright. If you turn this all the way up to 100, your head is going to move in the digital world with the car, which is extremely nauseating. It is going to make you very, very sick if you don't have a very strong stomach. I'll show you what this is like, and I will probably instantaneously get sick. Oh yeah, this is weird. So you can see we're sitting on a slope here, but my head is tilted to reflect that. Even though I am sitting straight up and down in real life, oh, it's already making me very sick. Very sick. It is just not a natural feeling. I will be making a video on motion sickness at some point, because I am extremely prone to it, but I have gotten over it entirely. Now we're going to go into the rain settings. We are in the rain now. There's 2 things about the rain that you need to know. We're going to start with the most important thing, and this is what's going to throw a lot of people off. SSR, or screen space reflections. This is, I believe, what gives water like a reflective look. It's what makes it look more like a mirror instead of just shiny. However, in VR, this is just not doable. You cannot have this setting on even on low. It will absolutely destroy your performance no matter what you are running. I have a 4090. We're gonna hop in. All my settings are the same as they were before, except I did turn HDR off. Look at my performance here, okay? We are not on Daytona, by the way. This is just Alton Park. I believe it's not nearly as brutal to run. We're already dropping frames. We haven't even started moving yet. Yeah, we're not getting consistent frame rate. We're dropping well below what we should be at. It's not doable for me like this. It's just absolutely destructive. Okay, we're gonna turn this off now. Look at the frame rate difference. Look at that headroom. We're talking 50% reduction in headroom. It is unbelievable, that setting. Let me go show you guys some puddles here. Game still looks really good. The rain looks so amazing in this game. Okay, look, we're driving around. Look at that. Look at that. Perfectly fine frame rate. Haven't even touched anything outside of HDR. Not really seeing puddles anywhere. Puddles are really where you see the difference. It kind of helps you see wet spots better, but it looks perfectly fine without it on. Even if it did help you see better, which I'm not convinced that it really does, it's not enough to justify not being able to play at a stable frame rate. Okay, there you go. There you go. There's a puddle right there. You see how it's shiny? It looks reflective. There you go. That's how you know there's a puddle there. It's very easy to tell. It's not a very deep puddle, so it's not... You can kind of see it right there, too. So, yeah, guys, it's really as simple as that. If this is on, you have no shot at running this in VR whatsoever. It's just not possible. If you guys are still struggling, just turn everything off, okay? Turn off shadows. Turn all this to low. Look at that. We are talking 70% headroom right here. It's really not going to make much of a difference. We'll get moving here in a second. And we are getting a super, super stable 90 FPS. Absolutely easy peasy. And it doesn't even look hardly any different in the rain, because in the rain, you're not really taking in the scenery. You got a bunch of spray in your face. You're not really looking at anything. All right, guys, well, that is about it. Those are all the settings that I use. Again, I have a powerful PC, so you're gonna have to kind of work around some of those things, but hopefully that'll give you guys a good idea of what is useful to turn on and what is just unnecessary load on your computer. Some of the settings really do make a huge difference in the visual quality. Things like the link cable, turning the bit rate all the way up, make sure sharpening is on. Big deal. Making sure mirrors are off, and then rain, making sure that SSR is off, or screen space reflections. VR is one of the most infuriating things to get working correctly, so if you guys have any questions or problems, let me know down in the comments, and I will help you guys out as much as I possibly can. I will be doing a gear video, hopefully very soon. I just wanted to get this done first. If you guys found this video to be helpful, drop a like. It'll help me out a little bit. But other than that, I will see you guys next time.